I'm Thomas Frick, and I'm an ordinary Hoosier. I have lived in Bloomington for 7 or 8 years now. Came up here for school and stuck around. Before that, I lived my whole life in Greenville, Indiana, which is where I was born and raised. A really small town in southeast Indiana, close to Louisville, Kentucky, New Albany down there by the river. I work at the Journal of American History, which is on campus at Indiana University. It's basically put out by a nonprofit organization whose goal is simply to further the field and profession of U.S. history. I work full-time in an office, and by night and by weekend I rap and write beats and perform and that kind of thing. I had always had, a real desire to do music. It was something I had started doing when I was maybe like 14 and got really into it, and just making beats and that kind of thing, and sort of started off writing rhymes as a joke with some of my friends. Then over the years I just started to develop more of a feel for writing and started to kind of take it more seriously as a craft, trying to think about flows and that kind of thing, and eventually that led to me just sort of branching off more into the real meaty topics that I prefer to write about. And then the more I learned about, when I was in school, I took audio production classes and a sound design class and that kind of thing, and it really just kind of drew me into like the kind of geeky side of production, like beyond just the cool creative nature of writing music. The whole aspect of mixing and like collecting sounds and just that kind of thing really appeals to me too, and just kind of really turns on this nerd portion of my brain that it really clicks with. I sort of do see a distinction between rap and hip-hop. The way I've heard it explained that made the most sense to me is that rap is specifically the art form of, the rapped voice. It's a certain vocal style, whereas hip-hop pertains more to the music as a whole and the culture as a whole. So there's sort of, 4, or some people say 5 elements of hip-hop, and rapping is just one of those elements. And then, there's graffiti art and DJing and dancing, and then the 5th that some people say, there is a 5th, some people don't, is knowledge, which I consider an important part of the whole thing. I think being a culture that was built from poverty and desperation and everything, a really important part of its power is to be able to help lift people up, and part of that is just through joy of finding creative outlets, but I think it's also important to kind of spread knowledge with it as well, kind of the KRS-One school of thought. For whatever reason, just ever since I started rapping, it just seems like my most just straightforward way to express myself, and I'm not sure, it's hard to say what it is about it that feels so right for me, but it is the kind of thing that, I'll mess around with different styles here and there, but that's, what always brings me back. So this is maybe my first real release as a solo artist, this EP called Critical, and it's something that I've just been really excited to get out because I've been working on it behind the scenes for so long. So it's great to finally, put the CD in people's hands. Nice to just be able to say, here's this thing I put so much work into. Check it out. It's done now. And it's gratifying in a way that sometimes the behind the scenes work isn't always, or sometimes it can feel kind of isolating to just be, locked in my booth recording for hours on end, just kind of feeling like I'm never going to see the light of day. And then for the songs to actually get out there and get to people's ears and, hear somebody say, oh, I liked that one song, or, that kind of thing, it helps. I do the promotion. I make a lot of my flyers. I did all the printing of the shirts for the stuff I was taking on tour with me, and the merch I was selling at the EP release, and I just do a lot of the different odds and ends. It makes me feel very close to my music as a whole. One other thing about the t-shirts, if I was feeling conflicted with, it's hard to find shirts for a reasonable price that are made in an ethical way, whether it be labor is the main thing. So I was trying to find a good way to strike that balance, and it gets expensive to get high quality, well-made shirts that are made by, someone who is compensated fairly. So I kind of took the back route and bought all the shirts secondhand, so I could kind of work around that problem of trying to make sure that I wasn't directly supporting a company that was doing something harmful. And another thing I felt good about in that respect is just the way that sort of reduces waste, kind of just taking something that's already in existence and kind of unwanted to a degree and turning it into something brand new. Seems like a good way to kind of repurpose something that's already there instead of just making more and more.
Call it a justice system, come off it. Ain't no justice building cages for profit.
Being socially conscious in my writing is important, because I think that being in a place of some privilege, I've had kind of access to sort of be able to take a step back and kind of look at things that are outside of my own little bubble. I think, to put it bluntly, I grew up in a middle-class family, so I wasn't worried every day about what I was going to eat that night or the next day or that kind of thing. So I had the leisure to think more about, the bigger picture rather than kind of just, the immediate struggle. I think that's one thing that privilege can be beneficial in, and that's something that I've heard a lot about arts and culture in different societies. Like, arts don't really start developing until the basic needs are met, and then once people are done worrying about what am I going to kill to eat tonight, they have more time to sit around and think that philosophical stuff. I try and do as much consciousness raising as I can about issues I think are important, but I also try and frame them in ways that are going to encourage someone to go out and look into it more, or stimulate their own thought about it and not just kind of pop a thought in their head that's mine. I guess one thing that I think is relevant to any creative person is how we stay inspired, and there's a lot of, I think, despair out there as an artist who isn't making it, so to speak. To just kind of, I think there's a lot of those dark thoughts when when you have a bummer night and it's just like, maybe I should just give it up, I'm never gonna make it, or that kind of thing. I think it's important for any artist to kind of have sources of inspiration, and I think for me part of that is seeing people that I really respect that have carved out a niche for themselves. In the hip hop community, you can see that with people like Dizzy Wright, or Tech Nine, who has been in the underground for like 20 years or something at this point, and has finally really solidified this force that's all built from the ground up and independent. People like that really inspire me. Seeing, you can be a band that isn't necessarily like, have a name in any sort of big way, but you could still tour the entire country and, find people that will dig your music wherever you go. And I think that's really cool. I've, known a couple people that just kind of, oh yeah, we're going on a 4-week tour. Like, be back in Bloomington in a month. It's just like, wow, that's awesome. Like, I don't know, I think it's easy to forget that stuff like that's possible. In general, the people directly in my life that are doing cool, admirable things keep me on my toes and keep me wanting to, keep pushing and keep making myself better, because I see, the kind of inspiring improvement that other people do just from day to day, whether it be music or activism or art or just anything of that nature. Just kind of watching the people that I've been lucky enough to surround myself with who are, working at really cool and impressive things, and it kind of keeps me motivated. It helps to be around productive people, because it's definitely easy to get sucked into the negativity and just kind of feed off that like a lot of people do. But I found it's really important to kind of weed that out of my circle and, have positive people that are doing interesting things.
Roles. The man's the one to get it done, the woman's there for show. And if she's got some power, then she's just a bitchy trope, cause otherwise we'd have to think critically. That's a slip